my father came home and he said, I've just agreed the licensing for the 84 Olympic. Would you like to do a joint partnership? So my first deal after 4 weeks was £1 million.
Wow.
I think the revenue turned out at about 20 million, literally within 3 years. Yeah, and that business was sold.
What experience did you develop or get that helped you in your next venture?
I learned delegation, scalability. I think the most important lesson I learned was relationships. From the money I'd sort of earned, open up a retail store, and from day one was extremely profitable.
So that was Millet Sports, right?
That was Millet Sport. I started opening more stores. In 2000, saw the opportunity of online retailing. I remember going to an event and there was a big retailer there. He said to me, "Oh, you're the guy who's just started going online, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "It's never going to work. I don't know what you're wasting your money for." I'd closed down most of our stores, moved into a warehouse, and at that stage I think the turnover was about 10 million. The intention was always, let's build this up and sell it. We were being courted by 20 private equity stroke venture capitalists, and we had two big retailers, JDSports and Sports Direct.
What did JDSports see?
First of all, we were very profitable. We were one of the largest online retailers in Europe.
How many customers did you have?
So at that stage we had about 500,000 and were growing exponentially.
We're with Simon Millet today. Simon is a friend and also a past client. He's an international businessman. At a young age, he established his first business, and he's had around 4 businesses over that period and been successful in establishing a business from an idea, generating it into a substantial concern, and also exiting the business successfully. And today is about that. Simon Millet, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to see you, Simon. When did you first get into the world of business?
I guess if I really look back, my father was a serial entrepreneur, very much involved in retail and manufacturing. Both my grandfathers were in retail and wholesaling.
Yes.
So I guess it was always in the genes. And I remember from a very young age of 12, not being given a choice of what to do on a Saturday. I had to go and work in one of the retail stores. So I think it was only natural that I would go down that route.
Yeah.
I left school at 16.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah, with very few results. And I went and worked for my father, who at the time had a factory manufacturing lighting in North England, in Manchester. I was there for a year, and in fact my father then sold that business.
Right.
And I managed to persuade John Lewis, which was a departmental store group in the UK, to take me on as a trainee.
Yeah.
I sort of told a white lie over my exam results, but managed to get onto that ladder and stayed with them for 2 years. And then by that time my father had started another business, which was retail, and I went into that business, and that business became quite a substantial business. 22, it was a chance meeting. My father was at a charity event and he was sitting next to the secretary of the British Olympic Association, and it was in 1982, and the secretary hadn't signed a license for the merchandise for the Olympics and was looking for a partner.
Right.
And over a handshake and a commission agreed. My father signed the agreement there and then and came back to the offices where I was working and said, "Do you fancy getting involved in the 84 Olympics?" Which were in Los Angeles in the winter, and the same year in Sarajevo.
Right. So it was the summer and winter Olympics.
Yeah. And in those days they were in the same year. And what that meant was that nobody could use the Olympic rings or even use the words Olympics on merchandise without going through us.
So what was that business called, Simon?
The business that we had was called International Franchises.
And it was essentially a management company of licenses and sponsorships, yeah?
So anybody, whether it's a sponsor or whether it was someone who wanted to do some merchandise, had to go through us.
And why were you good at that business? I know that's a jumped question, right? But wow, right?
Well, I think I've always been a people's person. I've always got on well with people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was fortunate. I had a product that everybody wanted. Well, a lot of people wanted.
Yes.
And we were the only people they could go to get it.
Yes.
I sort of learned how to source. So I remember Budget Rent-A-Car was the car rental company sponsor, and they came on to me and they wanted 250,000 badges.
Yeah. Wow.
And I just was good at trying to source these products and at a price that they were happy to pay. But I think my experience working with my father in both his business really helped that.
In what way?
I think it gave me the confidence. I mean, I was young.
Yeah.
I was able to structure the way the business was going, and I saw opportunities.
And despite the fact that you had the logos and the rings, and no one else had those, so you had a level of advantage which you'd positioned yourself with.
Yeah, very much so.
But despite that, my sense is you still had to create a relationship with all those parties.
Yes, no, absolutely. I mean, the sponsors were actually quite easy to deal with, and the sponsors we dealt with were the HFC Bank, Budget Rent-A-Car, American Express, McDonald's, Adidas.
They're big names, aren't they? Global
They were
names.
very big names.
But you were doing this in your early 20s, Simon.
Yeah. I actually, it did. I guess because I'd been working from such a young age, I didn't really think about age as a sort of
issue.
No, not at all. I don't know. It just came very naturally to me.
So tell me, did the business focus only on the licenses for the UK market?
It only for the UK market.
Wow.
But on the back of that, we got licenses for different sports as well.
Okay.
And then following on from that, we signed the 86 Commonwealth Games, which were in Edinburgh.
That's amazing. Wow.
The business grew to about 20 million.
So it was a substantial business in a short period of time, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, literally within 3 years. IMG, who had a partner they were working for, were really interested in taking over the 86 Commonwealth Games. So actually, before we'd even started, the company was bought out for a sizable amount of money.
I mean, they obviously saw value because those rings are pretty significant.
The 84 Olympics was one Olympics. It wasn't ongoing. We had signed various sporting association licenses, but the jewel in the crown at that time was the Commonwealth Games, and that's what they wanted.
The Edinburgh Commonwealth Games. Yeah. Did you prepare the business for sale, or was it just...
No, it wasn't. I mean, and actually I was thinking, what are we going to do after 1986? I hadn't really thought that far ahead. We were so focused on, doing a good job with the Commonwealth Games, and then sort of, I guess, I hadn't really thought about selling, and I hadn't really thought about what was going to happen post-1986.
What did IMG see that was valuable to them? Do you
think? I think they just wanted the Commonwealth Games, full stop, and that was it.
And it was an offer too good to refuse, was it?
Yeah, absolutely, because we didn't have really an exit strategy. We didn't really know what we were going to do afterwards, and for me, it was and we were never going to make that type of money from the Commonwealth Games that they were offering us.
So was that transaction luck or good management?
It was luck in a respect that IMG had a partner who really wanted the rights to the Commonwealth Games. They wanted it much more than the value in it to them was much more than it was to me.
Yeah. Very interesting. So at 26, 28?
Yeah, 26.
You were without a business.
So I then went back into my father's business.
Yes.
Which at the time he was looking actually to sell.
Okay.
So I was there for about 6 months, and then the sale went through.
Yes.
And that was a substantial business. It was a retail business, and he had stores right across the country.
Across the UK, right?
Right across the UK, but he also did a lot of export.
How many stores?
He had about 30.
And did you witness the sales process? Were you?
No, I wasn't.
No. But I guess in working in that business, what experience did you develop or get that helped you in your next venture, do you think?
I think scalability.
Yes.
I learnt a lot about that. I learnt delegation.
Yes.
Which my father was terrible at. But I actually saw, had he been a better manager, then I think maybe the business did well, but I think it could have probably done a lot better.
Yes.
I learnt to buy.
Okay.
I think the most important lesson I learnt was relationships.
Yes.
And particularly as I was sort of heading the buying department, how important those relationships were with the brands that he was dealing with.
Yes. Yes.
And that was something that really helped the next business that I got involved in.
Well, I want to go to the next business, but just to summarise, so scalability, delegation, buying, and relationships.
And the last thing is bringing on really good people.
Okay, finding the right people. Yeah. I just want to touch on scalability.
Yeah.
It's often talked about. What did you learn and that you've used moving forward? Because, scalability, everyone says, oh, you've got to scale your business, you've got to do this, you've got to scale your business. What's the key to scaling a business, and what does it really mean from your perspective?
I guess if you're going to put it into monetary terms, going from 1 million to 20 million without having to add those additional overheads. I mean, there are additional overheads, yes, but it's being able to scale it in a commercial way.
So in that sense, $1 of overheads is delivering more to the bottom line as your revenue rises.
Correct.
Yeah. Is it hard to do that?
I guess different industries will have different challenges. I think in the next business that I grew, it was actually quite easy. Okay,
so that was a sports retail business, right?
It was, yes.
Tell us about that.
So I found myself in 87 with no work, with no business, and I'd always sort of had this passion for sport.
Yes.
And it just a coincidence, I lived in London and there was a store near where I lived that was closing.
Yes.
That I knew was a very busy retail store. The people were retiring.
Was it a sports store?
It was a sports store.
Yeah.
And it had a lot of good partnerships with schools and clubs. Mm-hmm. And although I wasn't interested in that store, there was a store significantly larger a few doors away,
yes,
which I saw as an opportunity. From, I guess, the money I'd sort of earned,
yeah,
it was quite easy to sort of open up a retail store. At that time, there were a lot of independent sports stores across the country. I think someone once said to me there was something like 5,500
in UK.
In the UK of independent retail stores.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Sort of wanted to specialise in a few sports.
Yes.
So I sort of chose the major sports, which was tennis, running, football, rugby.
Yes.
So I opened that in 87, and from day one, the store just was extremely profitable.
So that was Millet Sports, right?
That was Millet Sports.
Yeah.
And then on the back of that, I started opening more stores. Some were successful, some were less successful.
So was this a scale thing?
So that was the idea at the time. And this goes, I guess, well, we'll talk about scaling, but the idea was that there were a couple of other large retailers at the time who I knew. And I guess, you know, if you say who did you look up to, I would say different people at different times.
Yes.
But definitely there were a couple of big retailers, one of them being Mike Ashley,
yes,
who started at the same time as I did. Yeah. He's become a lot more successful than I, but he had Sports Direct,
yes,
in the UK, and then there was a few other big retailers. At that time, it was, let's build up a chain of stores, and I sort of thought about selling, but it was, let's get there first.
Okay.
But I found that opening retail stores, because some were profitable, some weren't, and some broke even,
Yes.
actually, although I was building a chain of stores, I actually wasn't really adding a lot to the bottom line.
Right, so they were almost separate businesses in their own right.
Yeah. But I mean, combined, one store was very profitable, one store lost money. So the one that lost money, the one that was making profit was
Counted the others, yeah?
Yeah. So your staff levels, that you can't scale that because you need X amount of staff in each store.
Yeah.
And anyway, this went on for a few years.
Yes. Yeah.
And then,
trial and error by the sound of it.
Yeah, and some I closed, some I opened more. And then in 2000, I sort of saw the opportunity of online retailing.
Okay.
So it was really early on.
It was, wasn't it?
And we built a website, which was transactional.
Yes.
And it was generating a little bit of revenue.
Right.
And it was probably breaking even.
Yes.
And then my wife and I went on holiday, and we met a guy whose whole business was online.
Yes.
This was in early 2000s.
Wow.
And I spent the whole holiday with him,
learning
the business.
Mm.
And that's where I saw the opportunity.
Was he in sporting goods or something?
No, he
else?
wasn't. A completely different industry.
Okay, but you...
But I could relate the two industries. He was in the lighting industry at the time.
Okay, but it sounds like, I mean, you learned some stuff about scale previously, and it sounds like, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you're a bit frustrated at your experience because you'd set up all these physical stores, and some have been good and some have been not so good. But you still had that understanding of scale, and then you've coupled that with the online e-commerce experience.
Yeah. And so, having been on that holiday, we came back, we employed a marketing company who was going to look after all our paid advertising. And we started relying on the brands to give us some really good photography of products.
Yes.
And if they couldn't, we'd do it ourselves. And very soon after, we had we were one of the pioneers in the sports industry as far as online retailing.
Now, Simon, was there a moment through that journey that you've taken us through that you felt, wow, I don't know whether this is going to work? No one's done it before in sports.
Yeah. So the answer was, everybody was talking about in the early sort of 2003, 2004 about online retailing. I remember going to an event and there was a big retailer there, Bricks and Mortar.
Yes.
And he said to me, "Oh, you're the guy who's just started going online, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "It's never going to work. I don't know what you're wasting your money for."
So it's like you had all these spots over you.
No, I was confident. I could see the opportunities. Paid search then was much cheaper than it is now, so it was less competitive. But I just saw the opportunities, so much bigger than a retail store. A retail store, you have a maximum potential.
Yes.
You have a very small audience, whereas online,
the channels to market are huge.
It's huge. And if you look at Europe, you've got 300 million people. If you go to America, you've got significantly more. And then, as you increase your market size, I mean, really, it's
endless.
It is really. It's unlimited.
It is. And saying it today is like old news, right?
Yeah.
But remember, this was back in
early
2000s, Simon. You're very modest, right?
I know.
I think, so you took your online business from the UK and into Europe.
So we started with the UK. Our marketing was very much geared towards the UK. And we expanded our offering. So we were doing most sports by then.
Yes. Yes.
And for me, my vision was we would be the one-stop shop, but at the premium end.
Yes.
So I wasn't trying to compete at the bottom end.
No.
There were enough people at that bottom end.
Yeah.
It was the top end.
Yeah.
I also knew by going after the premium end, I would get more support from the brands.
Okay.
Which was key.
Yeah.
Particularly as a lot of the stock we were selling, we actually didn't have in our warehouse. So we were relying on the brands to actually supply that.
Yes. Yes.
So if you take a running brand, we would put on their website or on our website most of their running shoes.
Yes.
And then the orders would come in, the orders that we had in stock, we would send out the same day. The orders we didn't have in stock, we would get from our suppliers within 2 days.
Yes.
So we were looking for sort of roughly about between 2 and 5 day delivery.
Okay.
That was sort of our goals.
Yeah. But sounds like your relationships and your past experience with working with brands.
Very much so.
Yeah.
So the partnership. So I talk about relationships. I was very transparent with our suppliers, what we were
Yes.
doing, what we were looking to achieve. On the financial side, we would always pay our suppliers within 7 days.
Yes.
The industry itself was known for having people paying very slowly.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought if we could pay in 7 days, not only could we probably negotiate some settlement terms,
Yep.
but also create that really strong relationship with the brands that if we needed stock, we would be the first they would give it to.
Was it hard initially because the brands, the industry saw something that wasn't normal or natural? Did you have to buffet high seas to get through that, or were some of the things that you were talking about in terms of relationship, payment terms, and the like, ways of navigating through that?
I think so, yeah. I mean, to them it was all very new as well. We definitely came up with some hurdles when we started shipping abroad. But in the UK, I think they were excited as much as I was excited about it.
Yes.
They were excited about it.
Okay, so shipping abroad, where was the next stop? Europe?
It was Europe, yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess if we roll on a couple of years, I'd closed down most of our stores.
Really?
Yeah. And we'd moved into a warehouse.
Yes.
I can't remember the size of it, but it was significant.
Yes.
And we started bringing in quite a lot of experienced staff.
Yes.
With different experiences.
Yes.
So that might be IT,
Mm-hmm.
finance, customer service.
Yes. Did you still have most of your marketing out of house, or was it a mix of in-house?
It was a mix of in and out house. We brought in, so I wanted to bring in somebody really experienced for the marketing side.
Yes.
And we actually brought in the marketing director of Littlewoods.
Yes.
So for me, that was really important to bring in. And the salary was really academic.
Mm.
It was who can we bring into the business that will really add value to the business.
So what was their remit? Were they focused on building a brand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they also had experience in online retailing.
Okay, but previously were you taking that?
I was.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was sort of working with a marketing company and being
Mm-hmm.
sort of guided by them, but I wanted to sort of now take control of the situation.
Yeah. So, but what were you? I mean, you were taking control of marketing, but also getting expertise to help you.
Yeah.
In-house. But what did that allow you to focus more on as well?
So I think again it was strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So it is, where are we going next? What do we need to do?
Yes.
Continuing building those relationships with brands.
Yes.
And I think just generally running the company.
I understand. And what was the hardest thing about going from UK to Europe? Because I think there's many Australian business people that develop an offering in Australia.
Yeah.
but they'd love this scale opportunity of going international.
Yeah.
But it's quite a big step.
Yeah.
Or it seems to be. Are there some key elements that you can reflect
I
on that
think
allowed you to do that?
we learnt a lot. So we were actually the first retailer to go online with Amazon, sports retailer.
Really?
In the UK, yeah.
Wow.
And that happened in the early 2000s as well. Yeah. If I look back now, the hurdles, we brought in customer service people who spoke those languages. I actually can't think there was any difference between sending a parcel in the UK to sending a parcel in France or Germany.
No. At that point, you wouldn't have had... Your warehouses were all in the UK.
So at that time, we had all our logistics in the UK. I guess people's buying patterns are slightly different. So Germans would always buy two pairs of if they were wanting one pair of shoes, they would buy two sizes and then send one back, which was frustrating because we would end up having to
re-merchandise the pair. That
well, not only that, there would be an additional cost of sending it out.
Yes.
And then we would often send them a free label to send the goods back. so there was a cost.
Yes.
There, but I think generally what we did in the UK, and this is where I talk about scalability.
Yes.
It was very easy for us to sort of open up in France, open in Germany. Our website took all the various currencies, so that wasn't an issue. And I think it was around about 2008, Anthony, my son, joined us.
Yes.
And at that stage, I think the turnover was about 10 million.
Right, and just as a checkpoint, what would it have been when you first launched your online?
About 1.5 million.
Pounds?
Yes.
And now when Anthony joined, it was 10 mil?
We're at 10 million, and that was pretty well 95% online. And Anthony, whose experience was working in wealth management with UBS, decided that as much as the business was growing, we were also struggling a bit in certain areas, and one particular was operations.
Okay, so the inner workings were...
So we needed to continue with this scalability. We needed to automate things a lot more.
Okay.
So Antti joined us, and he really helped sort of take us to where we exited, and it was more the tech side of it that we could really...
When you say automate, it was it the sales process? Was it the inventory management process? Was it?
We actually had to build our own platform because at that time we couldn't find a platform that was scalable.
Yes.
And at the same time flexible.
Yes.
So Anthony was really good at sort of
putting that together,
identifying the people that we needed, and then between us we would come up with ideas, and then the tech people would implement them. Some examples would be we needed information from our suppliers. By that time we were holding a lot more stock.
Yes.
But there was also, we wanted to know if our suppliers had stock as we ran out.
Yeah.
What we did was we built a tool that could scrape our suppliers' stock information.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that gave us live stock information. So on the back of that, we introduced a minimum max on our key lines. And then as soon as those lines became low, they would automatically create an order form to send over to the suppliers.
So it was very formative back in the day, wasn't it?
Incredibly.
Yeah.
We had an amazing CRM system, which we built ourselves. So we had, when the business was sold, but not when I exited, we had something like about 500,000 customers who were buying quite regularly from us.
500,000?
Yeah.
And how were they spread?
Right across
geography?
the world. Right across
the world?
Yeah. And, our CRM system would really identify what those customers were buying, what they needed, how frequently they would need something. We would often offer buy one and get 50% off the second item.
Yes.
And all these type of...
And Simon, you talk about all those investments, the
Yeah.
CRM system, the stock management
and this
system.
was all very new to the online space. I mean, now it's
second nature. You've got to have these things, right?
But if you go back, 15 years ago,
it wasn't such.
Absolutely.
So, but how did you make those investment decisions? Because there must have been real money associated with each of those, right?
Yeah,
Not cheap to build, yeah?
It isn't, but it's a lot cheaper to build when you're using your own resource. So we did bring in an outside investor, but the company was, yes, of course, in the early days there was heavy investment, and we covered that personally, but as the business grew, it was generating revenue.
Yeah.
So from probably 2010, we were very profitable.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
The intention was always, when I saw the opportunity of the online,
yes,
let's build this up and sell it. It took a little longer than I expected to. We went through the 2008 recession.
Yes.
And actually, this brings me back to sort of relationships with brands, because in 2008, we were actually losing money.
Yes.
So our balance sheet didn't look that great.
Yeah.
A lot of large UK businesses were folding.
Yes.
Namely, I think there was Woolworths, HMV, and the credit insurers all pulled our insurance.
Wow.
So what that meant was that none of our suppliers were insured to supply us.
Yeah.
So myself and the CEO went to see all our major suppliers and sort of did a little roadshow, did a PowerPoint presentation. I remember one meeting with ASICS, who was a big supplier of ours, and the chairman of Japan had just come over, coincidentally, and they'd organised a board meeting for us and myself and our CEO. And, they were a little concerned about the credit insurance.
Yes.
So we did our PowerPoint presentation. The chairman had already done his research, and he said to me at the end of the presentation, how much credit do you want, Simon? And I said, well, I can't remember what the figure was, but it was a significant figure.
Yeah.
And he turned around to me and said, I'll double that.
Now, isn't that interesting? So how did that come about?
Again, it goes back to the relationships with the brands, being very transparent in what we do.
Yeah.
We used to send our suppliers on a weekly basis our sales reports.
Yeah. Really? So that's very transparent, isn't it?
Yeah, but
sort of
our sales reports in relation to that brand.
Yes, but it's open book, right?
Yeah, but I mean, for me, they should see what we're selling, because they may see opportunities.
Well, it sort of makes you accountable to them, but it also makes them accountable to
Absolutely.
you.
Yeah. And then, as I said, I go back to the money side of it. We were always paying within 7 days.
Yeah.
I guess they all felt confident that, what we were saying we would follow through with.
So, but you set it up to sell.
So definitely when Anthony came on board, it was definitely, full steam ahead. We brought in an outside investor. So, of course, we were aware that, he'd want a return on his investment.
Yeah.
He wasn't involved in the business. This was purely a financial commitment. We got to the stage where we'd agreed that, this was the profit we were making. This was the turnover. This would be a good time. It was a significant business.
Yes.
We employed a company to sell the business, and actually we were being courted by, I think at one stage we had about 20 private equity stroke venture capitalists interested, and we had 2 big retailers, which was our biggest competitors, which was JDSports and Sports Direct.
Sports Direct. I'm fascinated to know the size and shape of the business. What did it grow to, and what did it look like when you took it to market?
So when we went to market, we were one of the largest online retailers in Europe. We had warehouses in the UK, Germany, America and Australia, and we're growing exponentially.
That's amazing, right? Like Europe is a big, big market, and to be regarded as one of the largest online retailers. How many customers did you have at that time?
So at that stage, we had about 500,000.
Incredible.
And we actually decided, I mean, it wasn't going to be a pure exit.
Yes.
There was going to have to be an earn-out. And whatever deal we struck, myself and Judy, who was also a director, and Anthony, and all the management would have to stay there. We sort of felt we had to find the right partner.
Right.
And in the end, we went with JD.
What did JDSports see in your business?
So I think there were a number of things. First of all, the growth, the dominance in a lot of territories that they weren't in.
Mm-hmm.
We had an amazing platform that could facilitate the whole business and growth within the business.
Yes, yes.
We were in an area they weren't in. So we were premium sports. They were very much fashion sports.
Okay.
And at that stage also, their online side was very small compared to their retail side.
Yeah, yeah.
We, of course, knew each other through the wholesale side.
Yes.
And so it just seemed a perfect partnership.
But what did you have, apart from profitability, that they didn't have?
So we also going after a slightly different market. Mm-hmm. So they were after the fashion market, and we were going after the performance sports market.
Yeah, okay.
So they sort of felt that the two would complement, and they do to a certain extent.
Yes.
Because there is a crossover of customer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not exact.
No.
But there is a crossover of customer.
And were they attracted to your profitability?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much
Yeah.
so.
So the stars lined up there, didn't they, really? In terms of JD and yourselves, because there were gaps in their offering which you were strong in.
Yes.
And they had other strong points that they could leverage from.
Very much so. I mean, they're, looking at it from our perspective, JD had very strong relationship. I mean, they were much bigger than us.
Yes.
As a business. They were FTSE at the time 250, but they had very strong relationships with the brands. So, partnering up with them, we were aware that we would be able to piggyback on the back of that.
Could you ever imagine in your wildest dreams, going back, that you would build a business from scratch and sell it to a FTSE 250 company that was an international player, major brand?
Yes and no. My father was a very successful businessman, and in each industry he was in, he became the leader in retail.
Yes, okay.
So if I look back now, yes, but possibly not no at the time.
But you probably didn't set out to do it, right?
No, I didn't.
No. But nonetheless, you positioned the business to a point where you could do it.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
But of course, it wasn't just me. We had a lot of good people within the business. My son was instrumental in our operations side.
Of course, yeah.
My brother was involved in the finance side. We had a very strong management team, including a CEO who was ex-Littlewoods, who was in charge of marketing.
Yes.
So it wasn't, just me. It was just the team as a whole.
So you built a team of expertise around you,
very much
right?
so.
And how important in JD buying Active Instinct was Simon Millet to JD?
Well, I had to be there for the 2 years.
Yes. So the earn-out was 2 years?
Yeah. The earn-out was actually a year,
mm-hmm.
but I stayed on for 2 years.
Mm.
That's a good question. Initially, I think probably less.
Okay.
And then as time went on, more.
Oh, very interesting.
So I had always made it very clear that I would want to leave as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And the gentleman who we brought in to look after the marketing side, we had actually, over a period of time, promoted him to the CEO.
Yes.
And in JD's eyes, he was CEO and he was going to run the business. and I would exit at the earliest opportunity.
So in terms of JD as a suitor, in JD looking at the business prior to buying, they didn't see a lot of dependency on Simon.
No, and I think that's good.
Mm.
I think, a lot of people from the outside would look at it as a family business because my wife was in it, my brother was our financial director, Anthony, my son, was operations director. So a lot of people would look at the business from an outside and say, well, actually, this is a family business. We didn't see it that way, although there were family involved.
Yes.
The CEO, had a very instrumental role in helping to grow the business. So from JD's perspective, it was easy to continue to scale, and it didn't need the Millet family involved in the business.
And has JD got what they were looking for? What's happened to the business since then?
So unfortunately, the CEO had very different views on how the business should be run, and he was actually about we after about 18 months, I was sort of just hanging on. And they asked, they got rid of him, and they asked me then to come back in and run the business.
Yeah.
And I said that was fine, but at some stage I want to leave.
Yeah.
And at that stage, they then started integrating a lot of the different parts of the business. So the warehouse went up to, which made sense anyway. The finance went up, the customer service went up. In the end, there was very little left. They haven't kept the brand name.
No, but it sounds to me like for them...
But they kept the customer base.
Yes.
Which was, a huge asset to them.
Absolutely, because that was the different market that we've spoken about.
Yeah.
But also they had a fallback position, right, in the deal, in the sense that although the family wasn't, there wasn't a lot of concentration risk, in the event of what happening, I guess at least they could turn to someone that knew the business inside out.
Correct.
Which allowed them that transition.
Correct.
Yeah. What would you... the main reason for the earn-out, was that to ensure that JD got the earnings that they expected, that were represented, basically?
Yeah.
And look, earn-outs are... I mean, we're involved in many business transactions, as you know, and a lot of owners are concerned about earn-outs in business sales, but they seem to be quite prevalent. Do you think they're a good thing or a bad thing in a business transaction?
I think if the value is based on future earnings, absolutely.
Absolutely a good thing?
Well, it has to be there. If the earnings are based on current revenue and current profitability, then it's negotiable. But what I will say is, if you want the existing management to stay and run the business, of course you need something.
Because it ties the two together.
Yeah.
It's a way of joining that risk.
Yeah. I remember, James, when you and I were looking at a business in Australia.
Yes.
And the reason being was that a lot of the brands were starting to get very concerned about amount of turnover we were doing, as were a lot of retailers, UK retailers doing in Australia. And I understand now, sort of having seen the other side, why. We were looking at opening a business in Australia, which was a way of sort of overcoming the brand's concerns. And we identified quite a large retailer, and we wanted them to stay on.
Yeah, exactly.
And we'd agreed a fee, we'd agreed the price, and we couldn't get them to commit.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh no, if you want my business, that's fine, but I'm going. Right?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, Simon, because in the way that you worked through that transaction with JD, it's almost like you prepared the business for sale, ensuring that the business didn't have a level of owner concentration risk, but you were prepared to stand by the business through an earn-out to underwrite the future maintainable earnings, which is showing a lot of confidence to an acquirer. And I think that's some learnings in that, just reflecting on
Yes,
it.
yeah. I mean, I hadn't really thought about it, but we always expected to be part of the business going forward.
Yeah.
It was just a matter of how long.
Yes, yeah.
And we did have confidence. We had, our turnover was good, our profitability was good, it was growing month on month.
Yeah.
It was a very fun business to be in at that time.
I want to ask you a question, a follow-up question to that, and it's more about thinking about business owners that are maybe 5 to 15 years along the journey, and talking to them. Given what you've experienced, what advice would you give them in that sort of 5 to 15 year window of their journey if they're wanting to build their business to the point where it's saleable? Whether they sell it or not is another thing. But are there things that, on reflection, that you would advise them to really focus on to build a valuable business that is saleable?
I think the key to it is to make sure that you're not relied on.
Right.
So that any company looking to take you over doesn't need you. And I think that comes back to a very strong management team.
Yes. Was there a point in your journey where that was a really hard thing to sort out?
I think it's very hard to let go
as
a business owner. But once you do that, then you actually realise the ride is actually much easier.
Is that about knowing yourself? Is that the biggest issue? Like, in other words, like to let go, I think you've got to trust, right? But before you give trust, I guess you've got to know where you're strong and where you're weak.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think very early in my business career, I realised where my weaknesses were.
Yes.
And would bring people in who were much cleverer in that area and take the responsibility.
Thanks for that. I think that's a really important concept and something to think about. Every business owner is in that place. And in a way, whether they want to sell their business or not, having the option to sell means the business is valuable.
Yeah.
Right. And so if they're not selling, that value is going to their pocket.
Yeah.
And so I think it's an interesting dynamic for a business owner to think about. And appreciate your advice on that. What are the key elements or key learnings from that transaction process or that journey that you think you would highlight, Simon, from your experience?
So I think one of the things we did on the pre-purchase was we had incredible staff retention.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we did with our staff quite early on was give them shares.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And each year we would give them more shares.
Yes.
So that really helped with staff retention. And I think, when the various companies were looking at us, that was one important factor.
Yes.
I think the way we automated everything from finance to everything was there in hand.
So the sales ordering, inventory,
everything,
customer management.
You could ask us a question and we would have the information within minutes.
Yes, okay.
Of any part of the business.
Yeah.
We would have monthly management figures.
Yes.
If I look back now, it was an incredibly well-run business.
Yes.
Stock control systems.
Yes.
Of course, we would do our yearly stock control system, but we would do spot checks every month.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
I look back at relationships with brands. I keep harping on this because I think this was a key factor when people were looking at our business. Who do they contact for references? It was our suppliers.
So with your suppliers, your brands, did you have written agreements, or was it more the soft but essential relationship and longevity of that relationship?
I think it varied. Some of the big brands we would have contracts with based on hitting turnover numbers, and just because that's the way they operated.
Yes.
And then I would say the smaller partners, smaller brands, less so.
Yeah.
I would also say that I always treated the brands equally, whether it was a small brand
or a very large
or a very large brand.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So 3 elements I picked out there. One was tying your team in by retention through shares in the business. The second one was systems, processes, and automation.
Yeah.
To ensure information was as real time as possible and regular. And the third one was that brand relationships, supplier relationship element. So key things in exit or building the opportunity of an exit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, to me, I didn't think of it at that. I mean, this was something that was always from very. I guess I learnt from working for my father. This was something that was sort of inbred in myself.
Yeah.
You know, you need your suppliers. They're your most important. I mean, no, your customers are also important, but you needed your
the people who are helping you with the product
to build the business.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, without them, you don't have a business.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing is, when we look back, is customer experience. So we would look in the latter years to actually deliver a customer's parcel the following day. And we had some great systems that would, so we would use different carriers depending on the size of the parcel, where it was going to, the cost of the parcel, and this would be a continuous changing, but it was all automated.
Yeah, okay.
So we would use various couriers from all over to deliver all over the world.
And was that a challenge until you got volumes?
It was a challenge even when we had volumes.
Was it? Yeah.
It was, but because it was changing the whole time.
Yeah.
And a warehouse manager together with Anthony were on top of this the whole time.
Yeah.
And the costs were changing.
Yeah.
You know, almost daily the delivery companies would have they would change their pricing model.
Yeah.
So you'd be with one person one day, and then the following day you'd be with a different company. But we managed to automate the whole thing. So one thing we did very early on, which I guess stood us out from
the others
and from our competitors, was I was at a trade show, and there was a company selling. There was Haribo there. I don't know if you know what Haribo sweets are. And I just had this moment of madness and thought, wouldn't it be good to send a packet of Haribos out with every parcel?
Yeah.
And so I negotiated a deal, and I remember getting back to the warehouse and saying, oh, by the way, I've bought a pallet of Haribo sweets, and this is what we're going to do in future, and we're going to trial it and see how it goes.
So what was that? To surprise and delight your customer base?
Yeah. So they would get, with their parcel, a packet of Haribos.
Fascinating, eh?
And there would be a message on the delivery note saying, we hope you enjoy your little extra gift. And it cost us 2p a packet.
Wow.
Which was,
wow.
You know, it was only a little packet.
Yeah.
The response we had from that was just incredible.
That's fascinating.
And people would send parcels back to us because they were the wrong goods or whatever, and they would send an apology to say, I'm really sorry, we can't send back the Haribos, we've eaten them. But everybody talked in the industry about Millet Sports sending out a packet of Haribos with their...
So is this the detail in the retail? Is that, that's a small detail?
I know, but it makes such a big difference.
Doesn't it?
It does.
And others.
People remember those Haribos.
Yeah.
And we actually stopped doing them. I can't remember if it was pre-sale or post-sale.
Right.
I mean, the cost was getting... I know it doesn't sound a lot, but
no.
We were ending up spending about £10,000 a month on Haribos.
So were you a sports distributor or a sweets distributor?
At some stage, I think we thought, this is ridiculous. This is coming off our bottom line. We better stop it. And all of a sudden, we start getting these emails. Where's our Haribos?
Simon, we talked about the things that you did to prepare the business for sale.
Yeah.
I'm going to summarise again. the first one was retention of staff through issuing shares.
Yeah.
The second one was automation through systems and processes across the business to have real-time information.
Yeah.
The third one was your supplier brands and managing and looking after those relationships.
Yeah.
The fourth one was automating aspects around your customer experience, but really managing those customer relationships, including
very much so
the surprise and delight. Can I say that the fifth one was probably what we referred to before, and that is you bringing on expertise in different areas.
Very much so.
So that the business wasn't just dependent on you and the other family.
It wasn't dependent on anybody. We had very good people in who took ownership of their department.
Yeah, I love that. So let's go to the fire of the transaction in the coalface. Were there a couple of key elements that you would reflect on as being critical to making that a successful deal and process, which it was?
It was actually quite easy.
Yeah?
Yeah, it wasn't, because first of all it was a competitive space.
Yes.
But also, when JD came along, we already knew each other.
Yeah. Okay.
So it was just really a matter of,
sorting out the numbers?
Yeah.
And the deal terms?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
There really wasn't anything complicated about it.
No. But that sounds to me that there was a lot of transparency during the sales
Very
process.
much so. Very much so.
Yeah.
As said, I knew the chairman. A large part of JD is owned by Pentland.
Yes.
And I knew the team from Pentland.
Yeah.
And so it really wasn't a difficult deal.
No, you said you engaged a firm to help you with that process. Now, what value did they add that you couldn't have done yourself? Because you obviously had those relationships.
I think they packaged everything. I think, and they took the emotional side out of it.
Right.
So we weren't involved in the negotiations. Mm-hmm. They did it all for us. And I would recommend anybody selling a business, very much look at using an experienced company to actually help package and do the selling.
So do you think, on reflection, you would have been able to do it yourself?
I think it would have been more difficult.
More difficult.
A lot more difficult. And a lot more time consuming as well.
And harder to get the competitive play too,
very much
I guess.
so. Yeah, they have the relationships, not just within the sports industry. Well, they didn't have the relationships in the sports industry, but they do have the relationships within venture capitalists and private equity.
Yeah.
The sports industry was an easy one for them because there were probably only two retailers who might be interested in us.
I want to ask you one more question, because here's a guy that left school at 16.
Yeah.
Is not university trained.
No.
All right. Has done all that you've done and talked to us today about, and you're mentoring business students.
Yes.
At the Uni of New South Wales.
Yes. Yeah.
I love that, and I want to hear your perspective on that, because they're future business people.
Yes.
Thinking of it from a current business owner's perspective, what are the things that are important in terms of mentoring and developing people in their teams, future business people, and people within business?
Yeah.
From your perspective, given what you're doing,
yes.
you're doing with the business.
How I got into this was I did some mentoring at university in London while I was running Millet Sports, and when I moved to Australia, I just happened to bump into a professor at the university, and we were chatting, and I was telling him that I'd been doing some mentoring at a particular university, Middlesex University, and he said, well, I think they're looking for someone to help with strategy at UNSW in case competitions.
Yeah.
Do you think you'd be interested? And I said, of course I would be. And I remember my one and only telephone interview with the head of the business school or head of the program, and who's still there today, and he sort of just said to me, right after the chat, when can you start? And this is a voluntary role I've had.
Yes. Yeah.
but I think out of everything I've done, I've enjoyed the most. So just to give you a sort of an overview of the program, the students who attend the business school, they don't solely have to be part of the business school, they just have to be doing a course within the business school, are invited to join a program which is called Case Competition. It's run under the Career Accelerator department, and they're taught all aspects of business. So that's from finance, analysis, strategy, marketing, and they have various workshops throughout the year, and these are run by the students. So it's a student committee that run these.
So these are all the aspects that you learnt over your journey by experience.
That's right.
Yeah.
They choose 30, I think, out of 300 students every year to join this program. The students, after a year of going through all these various workshops, can then apply to compete in an international competition. They would have probably done a couple of domestics beforehand.
Right.
And these case competitions are... UNSW are involved in about 12 of them a year, and they compete against top business schools from all over the world.
That's exciting.
I guess I get them at a very raw stage, I'd like to say. And there's a whole team of us. It's not just myself. And we work on their presentation, and we challenge them on their strategies, and we challenge them on their marketing and their financials, and we give them a really hard time. But we're actually trying to help them, give them the tools so that when they leave, not only can they compete in competitions.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's a great experience for them. It gives them a knowledge of different industries because they're doing lots of practice cases on different industries in different countries.
Yeah.
It teaches them how to work under pressure.
Yeah.
And of course, it gives them the tools in all the different
disciplines.
Yeah.
So you're growing business people. You're growing business owners.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
I've been doing this 6 years, and we had a get together for some past students last year. And I mean, it's hard to measure how successful this program is. You can measure it on, what jobs they get at the end of it.
Yeah.
You can measure it on, do they make an impact in the classroom because they're helping other students. You can measure it on UNSW, and being known for running this program. There's lots of ways of measuring it. It's also promoting UNSW abroad. But I think we had a get together with some of these students, and I said I've been involved now 6 years, and I've been involved in many case competitions, actually attending, but also helping.
Yes.
So I help with all the competitions. And a lot of the students came over to me, and I'll be honest, I didn't remember their names. I sort of recognised their face, and they would say, I was with you on so-and-so, or you helped me as so-and-so. And then we talk about what jobs they were doing.
Yes. And
I was just blown away.
Yeah.
How senior they were in such a short time within their businesses.
That's exciting, right? Like
So we're really helping them. We're giving them the tools so that when they do leave university, they'll be much more prepared in whatever industry they go into.
Well, Simon, I think they're very fortunate.
Thank you.
To be guided and mentored by someone that's had to get every ounce of experience around those tools through their own journey.
Thank you.
To be able to pass that on is it must be very rewarding for you.
Very much so.
But equally a great opportunity for those future business leaders. And I think as a result, I think we're in good shape. Thank you
very
Simon.
much. Thank you.
Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.